Tonight I'm going to show you how to make a mirror image with your stamps, so you get a reverse of the image that you stamp. This is the card that I'm going to show you how to make tonight. I'm going to turn a few more lights on here. I have a 5.5 by 4.25 Magenta Madness card base, a 5.25 by 4-inch piece of Magenta Madness Designer Series paper. This is one of the new patterns that will be out with the new catalog. I'll let you see the back of it. I love the new patterns. The 6x6 Designer Series paper is tone on tone, and so it's fun to use with solid cardstocks. Really great for that. Then I have a piece of 3 5/8 by 4 7/8 piece of basic black, and a 3 3/8 by 4 5/8 piece of basic white. And the stamp sets that I'm using, or the stamp set that I'm using, is the Zany Zebras. And I don't know about you, but every once in a while I'll have a critter in a stamp set and I wish I had the reverse. I wish that it was facing the other way, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do tonight. I'm using this little fella here who's kind of hop, skip, and jumping. Love him. He's so cute. And I'm also using the Playful Alphabet die set that's part of the Pattern Play bundle. And that's what I made my hello with. So to start, we're going to take our, try to keep this where you can see it. How's that? We're going to take our 3 3/8 by 4 5/8 bit of basic white, and we're going to stamp an image on it. And I'm going to use my Stamparatus for this. And I have already on my Stamparatus my silicone craft sheet. And I have placed my zebra stamp where he will stamp down here in the lower left. He normally faces right. So I have him stamping in the lower left. So I'm going to do that first, and I'm using the corner of my Stamparatus to keep everything lined up. And you'll see why I have my silicone craft sheet here in a minute. So I don't have the pad underneath because these are red rubber stamps, and you'll see how I use the silicone sheet after I stamp him first with, I'm just using Memento Tuxedo Black. So, oops. It's nice to put the stamp case underneath your plate. That keeps it level, and I find I'm better able to ink up when my stamp is sitting level. Sometimes if it's sagging down, then I tend to hit the plate with the ink, and I don't want to do that. But so we'll ink him up real good, and make sure I'm up there in the, I think I'll put a magnet on this just for kicks. Stamp him. And just press down evenly everywhere. And that looks like a pretty good image. So I'm going to take this off now and set it aside for a second. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp him on the craft sheet, the silicone craft sheet. So I'm going to ink him up. And my friend Jennifer Roke showed me how to do this. She had made a video for her stamp camp, and she let me watch it, and she taught me how to do this. And she discovered that it's best to put 2 layers of ink on your silicone craft sheet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put down 1 layer. And then I'm going to ink up again and put another layer. And you can kind of see how wet it is if you look at it sideways. You can see how much ink you have on there. And what we're going to do, you may have guessed, is we're going to lay our paper down on that ink, on that stamped image on the craft sheet, and that is going to become our stamp, but it'll be in reverse, and you'll see. Okay, so that looks, I think I'm going to put just a tiny bit more, like up on his mane. Okay, so now I'm going to take my paper. Actually, I'm going to put the lid on this first. I'm going to take my paper that I stamped the first zebra on, and I'm going to turn it over. And the image that's on the mat will transfer to this side of my paper. So I'm going to put this right up in the corner, just like before. Put it down, and I like to just lay a magnet on it, and then I'm just going to rub this all over so I know I'm getting contact with all of that ink, the entire image. And then I'm going to pick this up. And there we have a mirror image of our first zebra. And they're pretty close in value. This one might be actually a little bit darker, but very close. So we have a mirror image. And I just want to explain, first I'm going to clean this up. I use my Stampin' Mist, just spritz it on this mat real quick, just like 1 or 2 spritzes, and then I use a piece of my Simply Chamois and clean this off, and then I'll grab a piece of scrap paper and just stamp him off. Oops, that's not quite big enough. I just want to get rid of all this ink so I don't have an accident anywhere. Okay, stamp him off, and then, oh, I can save that for another use, and then I'll just wipe the stamp off too. So when I was setting this up today, the way I got the position was, first I just put my blank cardstock in, and I placed the stamp where it would stamp where I wanted it on the left. And I had an extra zebra stamped separately, a mirror image, so that I could, I want this to dry. I think it's dry enough. I had a mirror image already prepared so that I could place, so that I knew if I had enough room when I was placing this stamp and picking it up with the plate. Because I had this reversed image laying there, I knew it would be okay. So that's how I got the initial placement for this. So the next thing I want to do is put my letter die cuts down, and I'm going to use this surface because I want to use my magnets. And let's see, what did I do with everything? So we have this strange looking thing, which I will explain. This is just a template that I made today, and I'll tell you how I did it. I had a piece of vellum that I cut a little bit bigger than my white cardstock, and I just laid it on my stamped image, and I drew corners with a Sharpie down here so that I knew where to put this every time. Then I got a bowl, yes, a bowl from the kitchen, literally a bowl that had about the right radius, something close to what I wanted, and I just drew a line around it with a magic, not actually it was a highlighter. I just drew a line around the rim of the bowl, and then I cut in from the sides and around my radius. It's not perfect, it doesn't have to be at all, and then cut straight out. So, and then I took that same highlighter and just went over this so it was really easy to see. And that's how I made my template. And so now all I have to do is line up these little corners. I have 2 sets of corners because the first time I did it I was off a little bit, and so I adjusted it. So I'm just going to lay this template over my stamped zebras, lining up those corners, and I'm just going to throw a magnet on there. And I'm going to grab my dies from the Playful Alphabet set, and I'm using hello with an exclamation point here. I don't think you can see that, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to lay my dies, and I marked on here, when I laid it out the first time, I marked it. So if you're doing this for the first time, you're just going to have to play around with it to know where to start and end. So I made marks, so when I make more than one of these cards, I know where to start and end my letters and my exclamation point. Whoops. And yes, the dies will jump to the magnet and my O. And so I'm just resting these against the vellum. The vellum has just enough thickness that you can kind of rest your dies against it. And then the exclamation point, just like that. Very simple. And then I'm going to take well-used washi tape and tape these down. You do not want to use washi tape that's really sticky. You will tear your cardstock. When you run adhesive through the cut and emboss machine, it really adheres and it will pull up the surface of your cardstock. So I'm just taping each of these down. Occasionally I can get two taped down with one piece of tape. Just like that. I'm using tiny pieces because I don't want a lot of adhesive on my cardstock. Less chance of tearing it. And it doesn't take much to hold these in place to get them to the die cutting machine. You just need a little bit. So it's all taped down, so I would just lift this off and it stays in place. So I would just run this through the stamp and emboss machine, and I already have one done, so I'll set this aside and show you what it looks like. Looks like this. So what I have now is I have my two zebras, a mirror image and the original, and I have cut out the word hello, an exclamation point, and I'm going to adhere this to the black cardstock. Now you want to keep the center of your O because you'll have to fill that back in. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, first I'm going to adhere this to the black cardstock. And I think I'm going to use liquid adhesive tonight. I'm just going to try to keep it pretty light, but I'm going to go in and around some of these letters. I don't want it to squish out, but I want the edges of the letters to stay down, obviously, on the card. So just like that. Any place I think I can get in there with a little bit of glue without getting too close to an edge, I do. There we go. And then this just gets centered on the basic black cardstock. So the next thing I do is I'm actually going to fill these back in with black. Now you could leave it this way. You could just put the center in the O and leave it this way. But I wanted another layer. I wanted a Magenta Madness layer with a drop shadow. And so to make a level surface to put my letters on, my magenta letters, I filled in these die cut spaces with black again. And using the template that I had earlier, got this exactly where I wanted it, got everything spaced nicely. So now I'm just going to go back in. I cut a set of black letters, and these don't have adhesive on. They're just, where's my little putty tool? And I'm going to wait and put the center in the circle until after I put the O in, the black O. Make sure I have all my pieces. I might be missing one. I don't know. Hopefully not. H-E-L-L-O. Okay, I think everything's here. So to do this part, I just added adhesive right in the spaces. Okay, and now the circle, and this is one of those shapes where you kind of have to make sure you have it the right way. It looks like it should only go one way. I mean, it could go any way, but it doesn't. It's a little bit taller than it is wide. So I'm going to go around the edges, and I don't have to be too careful here because I'm going to put that white circle in the middle here in a second anyway. So, and there is a right and a wrong side to your die cuts. The smooth edge is the right side. Oops, okay, see, I had it wrong. And then I'll just put a little glue in the center and add that white center of the O that I cut out earlier. Like that. There we go. And then my exclamation point. All right, so our dot and the top of our exclamation mark in there. So that's that part. Now for the magenta letters, what I did was I cut my piece of magenta cardstock and I put it on a bit of that double-sided adhesive sheet that I think I showed that last week. I love this stuff for this kind of work. So now all I have to do is peel off that adhesive back. I say that's all I have to do. Sometimes they're a little tough to get started, and I'm just pulling the little whiskers off of these. So when I place them, after I pull off the backing, I'm going to put them up and to the left just a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit, so that I have a bit of a drop shadow. You can probably see that here. Because I put the black letters back in there, I have an even surface, a level surface to adhere these to. So we have our letters on. Now I'm just going to stamp a few times with the star stamp from the same stamp set from the Zany Zebras, and I'm using Magenta Madness ink to put a few sets of stars around these guys. I'm going to stamp off over here once and just check. Yep, everything looks good. So just like that, and one in here. And one up here. And then finally, we just need to assemble the card. I think this is going to be my favorite pattern out of the 6x6 DSP. So I'm going to just adhere the piece of Designer Series paper, and I've lost my dimensions. Let's see, I said this was 5 1/4 by 4. 5 1/4 by 4, and I'm just going to use Stampin' Seal to do this. Like that. And I put the main element at a little angle because I thought it was playful and didn't want it to be real formal. So I'm going to do that here. Just angle it a little bit on the card front. And then I have another example that I made up today of this using a different stamp set. But this could be used with anything, a flower that you want to face the other way. Like I said, usually for me it's a critter that I want to be facing the other way, but there we go. So there's our hello card, and then I have a second sample here. This one is from the Back on Your Feet stamp set, and this little sloth comes in from the right when you stamp him normally. So I used the mirror technique today with my Stamparatus and the silicone craft sheet and made him come in from the left. And I did it the same way. First I'm going to get my cardstock in place. And like that. And I'm going to position him so he's coming in from the edge, okay? But that's not the edge I want, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp on the silicone craft sheet. And this is the front of my cardstock. The back actually has some ink on the back, so this is the front. So I'm going to stamp him on the craft sheet. I stamped him. I'm going to stamp him one more time just to get good coverage. I'm going to take that out. There we go. So now I'm going to take the front of my cardstock, flip it over so I pick up that image, and see the left side is now on the right when I flip it over. So I'm going to lay this down. Put my magnet on and just give that a rub to pick up the image. And there he is coming in from the left side. So that's how you create a mirror image. That's how you set it up. Here's another example where I used a Pear Pizzazz card base, and I believe this is Just Jade Designer Series paper, but I inlaid Pear Pizzazz letters instead of black, and I really like how this turned out. There's not a second layer of letters, it's just the inlaid Pear Pizzazz. So you can do this in any colorway that you choose. Thanks for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. That way you can find future videos that I post easily. Also, check the description below for a link to my blog post. That's where I provide even more card inspiration, techniques, and news about Stampin' Up! Products. Thanks again for watching. I'm Kim Ray. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I'll see you again soon.